Hello, this is Mr. Turek. I'm going to walk you through the basics of making shapes in Yearbook Avenue Designer. It's really simple. I'm on a blank page right now, and I'm just kind of messing around with shapes. But basically, it's this little icon up here. If you click the black arrow right next to it, you'll get this drop-down menu with a bunch of preset shapes. They're pretty straightforward. When you click on a shape, it automatically populates it in this page here. The way it works is pretty straightforward. You can resize it. If you have Snap to Grid turned on, it'll snap into position when you let go of your left mouse click. Snap to Grid is under View, Snap to Grid. And you should probably keep that checked so that you don't get kind of a sloppy design going. Another handy thing to recognize is that when you're moving a shape around, it's pretty easy to select when there's not a whole lot of images on the board or elements, but all by itself, a shape is pretty straightforward. If you click on it once and then you click on these bounding box edges, that acts as part of the shape and allows you to select it and move it around. Another helpful thing is the Format tab. This is where you're going to change your shape colors, the arrangement. We can click on this box up here to place a bunch more shapes. Let's say we want a bunch of diamonds. Alright, there we go. Got a bunch of diamonds for our spread. Kind of mess around and make some abstract shapes like this if we want a really kind of messy design. If you want to make sure that the shape keeps its original integrity, you're going to start to use the Format tab and check your X, your Y, which is the position of the shape on the layout, and you're going to check your width and your height. So this is a diamond. This is pretty straightforward shape. It has, kind of a square shape. So if you want to make sure it's the same width and height, go down here and manually enter that. So if we do 22.6 and then hit Tab or Enter, it's going to make it the original portions, which is really handy when you're not sure if the shape is exactly the same ratio it was at the start. Another handy thing under Format is all the various editing you can do here. You can change the fill color. You can change it to purple. You can turn the transparency down. You can mess with the arrangement, bring to front, send to back. This is incredibly simplistic. So when you get a very complex stacking order, I think it's going to depend upon at what point the shape was created. And yeah, you're just going to have to remember what order certain shapes were created to know where they are in the stacking order. And then you're just going to have to click through each individual image or click bring all the way to front or bring all the way back to change the stacking order. In programs like Illustrator or InDesign, that's relatively easy to keep track of because you have a whole menu devoted to stacking order. But in here, it's pretty simple. You can also change the tint, which is going to kind of override the color that you have picked for your object. And I would highly recommend we not get in the habit of doing that because these sliders are kind of iffy and you can't numerically change them. You have to just sort of use this little slider, and we're going to wind up with 20 billion different colors if we start changing the tint on all these colors here, unless we stick to a set number. And then your wrap text options are also available for these kinds of shapes. Essentially, text wrapping is when you have a piece of text in a box, you can place it over the shape, or you can set the text wrapping to wraps around. And you can see how difficult it is to select individual items here. We check on text wrapping for this. Turn on text wrapping for the object. As soon as it's next to text, it'll wrap around it automatically. These options are really confusing. Like you just saw there, I had to click like several times to make sure that text wrapping was turned on. Then I had to go back here and reapply it even though I'd already turned it on for this object. So just bear in mind you might have to click on something a couple of times. The wrap padding here is just how close it gets to the actual object. And it seems like there's no hyphens, so yeah, it can be kind of finicky. The other effects you have are drop shadow, and it's pretty straightforward. Just gives you a little shadow here. Under the effects panel, you can adjust the drop shadow, turn up the blur, the distance, the opacity, all that stuff. Very straightforward. Change the angle. You can give your object a glow. I want to give it a yellow glow. Turn that up. And again, you really don't have a lot of choice. Like you can't do a glow and a drop shadow. You're going to have to pick one or the other. And yeah, I personally do not like using a glow. Drop shadow is okay because drop shadows create depth and they're pretty useful in designs, but honestly, a glow is not that great. I don't know why people like them at all, and they don't seem to serve much of a purpose.